Sahana vavatu, saha no vunaktu, saha viryam karavavahe, tejasvinavaditam astu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one nourish us both, may that one protect us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily quarrel with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So in this peace prayer, we have this opening line, Sahanavatu, Sahanavatu, Sahano. May that one protect us both and nourish us both. So we often wonder, if you are seeking protection, protection from what? And if you live in this life, you realize that as a baby is born, it's born in a helpless condition. Unless it is nurtured and protected, it doesn't survive. Not only for humans, but throughout the organic species. So our initial stage is one of helplessness. We require some assistance. We can't manage it on our own. And you must have noticed we're all different. And that's a good thing. If you all looked like me, it would be a terrible thing. So why would we look different, be different, had different characteristics, different personas or personalities, masks? Well, it is because that life force that is within you is a good investor and wants to manifest itself through you in an individual way, so that overall there is dharma. Dharma means a condition where there is harmony, where everything is held together nicely, not separated. Fortunately, we have something called gravity, which keeps us together, keeps us undivided in a sense. We have electrical energy that keeps us dispersed also. So in being born, we realize that as we grow older, that we need protection. As a baby, we don't know anything, except that if we make a noise with the lungs, everybody in a household comes rushing. Because in a household of a newly born baby, there's only one boss in the family, and that's the baby. And on the other side, there's an acknowledgement, this is a helpless being. And so we'll take care of it. Why would we do it? We do it out of love, a spontaneous feeling. Maybe a maternal feeling that this child has to be protected, loved, fed, that this child has to survive. But behind it all is this individuality which is expressed more and more as it gets older. And as it gets older, out of this baby stage, it still understands that it is reliant on others, even though by the age of 2, it's exerting its individuality and testing you out. On the one side, the child is told, no and don't touch. On the other side, the child will look at you and still go out and touch. It's exploring. And crawling, what we call cross crawl, that means integrating the 2 hemispheres of the brain in a coordinated way, ready ultimately to go into a standing position. So then the element of independence is coming. Until finally, there's a full-blown individual. Maybe in Ireland, that full-blown individual is not fully full-blown because there are some people I discovered when I came to Ireland at the age of 40 or so, still living with the parents and so on. But you see, this assertion of individuality is also taking refuge. Because when we come into this world, we are faced with our own difficulties and problems away from the protective sphere of parenthood. And so we may come across some hardships and we realize that we ourselves cannot deal with them. Now, it depends on how you identify yourself with the body. If you identify yourself more with the body, then the only place that you can take comfort and protection and refuge will be in the external world. And this can take many, many subtle and many gross forms. The gross form of it will be to please the organs of the body, or the instruments of the body, we should say. The instruments of the body, the eyes, the ears, and so on and so forth, all the senses. And see that if we gratify these senses, there's a temporary feeling of satisfaction. It doesn't last long. We have to keep filling up, until at some point we realize it's a disaster. Because in filling up, it's simply fueling the desire for more of it. And it never ends. A kind of assumption that there is an inadequacy within me that I have to fill up from the outside. And sooner or later, as we get the fruits of this, which is painful experiences, or an absence or a loss of what we were enjoying, there may come a certain realization. Maybe there are no deficits. Maybe I don't have any gaps in me. Maybe everything I need is already there. I just have to take my attention and tune into it a little bit. I just have to observe it and I have to see it. Now, this method of tuning has various aspects to it or approaches to it. Technically, we call these approaches yogas. Yoga, that is, the movement, the impulse to be united. Everybody wants to be united in such a way that there is a reigning peace and a freedom. But how to do it? Now, the mind has various functional dimensions. Obviously, we have a thinking faculty, we have a feeling faculty, we have a willing faculty. This is all taken into account. So that the yogis have told us, well, all this energy that is dispersed as feeling, or as thinking, or as acting, all that energy is just one thing. But when it appears as a kind of vortex in me, an expression in me, it looks like an individual thing, my energy, my body, my mind, my energy, my thoughts, my relatives, my bank account, my house. Well, there has to be a discovery eventually that embraces more of a totality, a generalization that says, well, it looks like it's mine, but at the end of the day, it's not. It's only one thing. We have to persuade ourselves of this. Now, the easiest possible way will be to mobilize this emotion that expresses itself as anger, as depression, as disappointment, but also as love. And all of these things express themselves in a frustrating way if they are like satellites around a central theme of I, that is an identification of the body. And the more we identify with the body, then the more we invest in the external world related to the body. So that life for us becomes something like a struggle. Many of you will be reading, because I've mentioned it in many other talks recently, this wonderful book by Florence Scovel Shinn, Game of Life and How to Play It. That's the opening passage. Most people consider life to be a struggle. But Other people will take it as a game. And in order to understand it as a game, as a play, you have to understand it is a play based on a spiritual law. And that spiritual law can then be mobilized. Now, how do we rate this shift in attitude? Well, it is depending on how we take refuge, whether it's refuge in external things, whether it's refuge in internal things. Some examples I've given already of external things. But the internal things and the external things also can be real needs, shelter, basic needs, shelter, food, clothing. And there are many people throughout the world who are deprived of these. Today is United Nations Refugee Day. I think it's so that there are something like 100 million people who have been displaced from their homes as we speak. And maybe some 26,000, some 26 million, I would say, who are refugees. That means who have had to flee because of fear. Because the normal environment in which we can nurture life and ultimately nurture to the extent that we get some kind of awakening within us that acts as an avenue or channel for our freedom. But the basics, if the basics are denied, then those opportunities are also denied. If we are hungry, we won't be centered on God, we'll be centered on food. If we're thirsty, we won't be centered on God, we'll be centered on some water, where to get water from. If we have no shelter, no stability, if women and children are crying, they have to take what meager possessions they can. And there are refugee camps throughout the world which are in no man's land. They're not in one place or the other. They're not citizens of any country. And so according to United Nations, these refugees are coming from trouble spots, but there's one common factor: man's inhumanity to man in the 21st century. In the 21st century, we don't think of anything, normally speaking, in the first world beyond our own circumstances. Most people cannot even imagine what it's like to leave your home because you're forced to, out of either natural disaster or fear, but mainly fear, mainly because you're forced out. And where does this come from? It comes from the fact that other people are taking refuge in power. Other people are taking refuge in anger. Other people are taking refuge in territory, a sense of territory possession. These people have not understood the principle that there is nothing that belongs to you. And so Sri Ramakrishna tells a wonderful, beautiful story of God laughs on two occasions. Never mind about the first one, but the second one is two brothers are fighting. This is my land. No, this is my land. And God intervenes. My dear children, it's my land. You shouldn't fight over it. It's not yours at all. So when we make this shift in ownership, it becomes tremendously liberating. And we shift our sense of taking refuge. Some people take refuge in psychological satisfaction. Somebody praises me, I get inflated. Somebody blames me or criticizes me, I shrink. A mere word can drive somebody towards suicide. Imagine. Or a mere hostile word, said either meaningfully or not, we can nurture, we can chew the cud of resentment for years and years and years, damaging our physical health apart from anything else. So when we are hard pressed and we take refuge in the outside world and it doesn't work, and we take refuge in the inside world, the world of psychological satisfaction, and it doesn't work, then many people turn to something that is beyond the scope of human potency, namely a God. And so we are told that there are people who worship just to get themselves out of extreme difficulty, sometimes making a bargaining process. If you cure my disease, if you're Roman Catholic, if you cure my disease, then then I'll say 1,000 rosaries. Or I'll offer some kind of halwa to Ganesha, do it for 40 days just to get something. And that's okay. It's not bad. And there are other people who just want to improve their life, to add whatever they have, let us be more abundant and so on and so forth. And then there are other people who want more knowledge. And then there are other people who worship for the sake of worshipping, just for pure love. Now, in Swami Vivekananda's lectures on Bhakti Yoga, he gives a wonderful triangle, familiar to you by now, because I often quote it. What is the definition of love? He puts it as a three-cornered figure. So love has no rival, love has no fear, and no reward. Just love for love's sake, non-demanding love. And that means that we shift our tendency to take refuge in something from a point of dependency to a point of self-surrender. That's the transition. People are dependent on substances, for example. There's a dependency perhaps on drink or drugs. That's the external thing. Or perhaps there's a dependency on praise or reward or thanks. That's a psychological reward, an internal reward. But taking refuge in the divine, not to get anything else, maybe just to get yourself out of distress, knowing it's the only get out of jail card that we have. And allowing that to deepen to the point of self-surrender is what is called Bhakti Yoga. We take the Bhagavad Gita, for example. There we see Arjun in a tremendously disturbed psychological state. It's a state of nervous breakdown. Nervous breakdown because all the physical symptoms are there. Can't hold the bow, shaking, tears are flowing, wants to run away. So where would you run away to? I often ask this question to people. You know, the people in Hawaii, where do they go on holiday? People spend a fortune going there for their holiday. Where do they go? Maybe if they go there, they go to take refuge in another place to escape the tourists. I don't know. So taking refuge has different kinds of components. One is we are forced out, we have no other choice. On the other side of things, it evokes our sense of compassion and love and concern so that we can, within the scope of our means, we are able to respond. Now we can respond out of compassion at the human level, and this all means that we are purifying the mind if it is completely selfless. If compassion is so pure that there's no extra motive about it, there's no external impetus about it, no sense of selfishness about it, no sense of concern about I, no saying, you see, let me tell you a secret, I gave a big donation to a hospital, don't tell anybody. It means tell everybody, please. So, provided that selfish component is not there, this compassion is a purifying agent. It purifies and clarifies the mind along with all the other high virtues, noble virtues. And when we see God within that person, that's sufficient motivation for us It mobilizes our hands for service. It mobilizes our hearts automatically. We don't have to think too much about it. It's a spontaneous thing. And so in this condition, explaining this psychological condition, Arjuna tells, see, Yat Shreya Shanishtam Bruhitan me Shishasteham Sadimam Tamprapanam. So in the beginning, before that, making with my nature weighed down by feeble-mindedness, that's a general condition that most people have. Therefore, my mind is not strong. I have to rely on something else, just as a child has to rely on something else. My understanding confused. About what? About my direction in life, about my duty, about what I should be doing, what is the right thing to do. I'm confused. I entreat you, say definitely what is good for me. You tell me what is good for me. Even though Arjuna, of course, has made his own mind up. But now he's saying, you, because he's desperate. I am your disciple, do instruct me, who have taken refuge in thee. So the first thing we have to do is understand our disturbed condition. Second thing we have to do then is, and be honest about that. The second thing we have to do is, we have to look for what is a reliable umbrella, what is a reliable refuge. It's not a place, and invariably it is a person or a personalized version of this supreme principle. In this case, it's Krishna. And the addendum to that will be, I don't find any remedy for the grief that parches my senses, though I were to gain unrivaled and prosperous dominion over the whole earth and mastery over all the universal forces that we traditionally call devas. This is my condition. And for this reason, I'm taking refuge in you. I'm your refugee. This is the greatest clue to bhakti yoga that we have. Say, of myself I can do nothing. And so I'm going to surrender myself, not with total dependency, because that's the extreme. That will be evoking weakness, but with a moderation, with a certainty, with a faith. And that faith has to be gathered, because faith is the opposite of fear. And fear, as I say many times, is faith in heredity, faith in the thing that you call I, which is purely a psychophysical unit, mainly body. And for those who have a sense of embodiment, the 12th chapter of the Gita tells us, then you should really embrace all your feelings and fix your mind, fix your heart, fix your energies on me. And when Jesus is asked, what should I do to gain eternal life? He says, what does the scripture say? Oh, love the Lord your God. What is the first commandment? Love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That is the essence of the whole of bhakti, regardless of your religion. There's another place which is there, and it's repeated a number of times, you see. Taking refuge in me. All the time it's being told. It's being told in the 4th chapter as a response. I am taking refuge in you. Yes. And what is the Lord saying? You take refuge in me, please. I'm happy to take refuge. And so we find that even the worst of sinners can get this divine grace if the heart is turned to him in all sincerity. And for that reason, his devotee is never destroyed. These are comments about chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. So fix your mind on me is something that is repeated all the time, constantly. Fix your mind on me. This is said in the 9th chapter, said in the 18th chapter, in many different places, 12th chapter and so on. So this 9th chapter will tell us, more or less toward the end, with the assurance that my devotee, that means those who have fixed the mind in the right place and taken refuge in me with a sense of self-surrender. Now, what do we mean by surrender? It's not like a military exercise where one says, I surrender, and you sign a peace treaty. Not like that. Not make a compromise like that. A child surrenders. A child is happy to be carried by the mother, and the mother is happy to carry the child. And what does the child do? It doesn't struggle. It simply allows the mother to take the child. As long as the child is happy playing with toys, the mother leaves it. This is Ramakrishna's example. But when the child then gets tired of the toys and starts crying, the mother runs. So we have to get to a situation where we have a discipline which is difficult for many, namely letting go. Letting go of the ego, letting go of our attachment to possessions or situations or things. And when we do that, a flow starts happening. There's an internal flow of grace that comes. And then we are happy to be carried, like swimming. There are two things you can do in water, swimming and drowning. Much better to do swimming. But before you do swimming, you can do floating also. You can go with the current. You don't have to struggle against it. You can dive down under the waves and allow yourself to be carried. As easy, gliding across, not struggling. So this is the kind of taking refuge. We all have to take refuge, and we are assured that my devotee never perishes, says Sri Krishna. Kuntaya pratijanti na me bhaktaha pranasyati. My devotee never perishes. And then, mamhi partha vyapasya yepi shu papa panyaha siriyo vaishastata sudrastepi yanti paramam gati. For those who take refuge in me, O Partha. Who are those who take refuge in me? And then he gives all the examples. Vaishyas and so on, women, Vaishyas. In this age of gender equality, it sounds strange to say, even women can take refuge in me. But let's give it a more authentic turn. We take refuge in the mothers. All children take refuge in the mothers. Where will the mothers take refuge? So even those who are weakened in society, and we find many of them in this 21st century. In Africa, we find women downgraded. In parts of South America and Asia, we still find women downgraded. Of all the refugees in the world, says United Nations, over 50%, 54% would be women and children, helpless, carrying the burden not only of their own survival, but that of children also. And what of those going and fighting for one side or the other, leaving many widows behind? Do you expect this in the 21st century? What is the difficulty? Well, the difficulty is that all the leaders and scientists of the future should be educated in understanding their own divinity. And this is what the Vedanta does and teaches. So for those who take refuge in me, of any station of life, be they even people involved in industry and commerce, and even those who are unskilled labor, and even those outside any social structure, and even people of inferior birth, that is, truly, they all attain the supreme goal. There is no social distinction in the divine eyes. It's only in the human eyes that produce this oppression that ends up in people having to take refuge somewhere else. I came across today a man. I saw him and his life was explained to me. I didn't meet him. Having understood his life, I wish I had met him properly. But he became a refugee from Syria, and he took refuge in Ukraine. Now he's a refugee here in Ireland. It's not just bad luck, it's a story of tragedy. Psychologists will tell us that the most stressful thing to do is to move house. Never mind about moving house, imagine moving countries out of necessity. Imagine the psychological conditioning that is required. Imagine how much counseling on a psychological level, how much understanding. And we may say, well, what can we do from our distant shores? Well, every thought has an impact somewhere. We can sit in our sadhana, in our sandhya, in our evening devotion, in our morning devotion, in our meditation, and we can send a current of goodwill everywhere to all four corners. Don't think it won't have any effect. Thought moves faster than a sunbeam. It is only counteracted if there is a doubt or a fear. So we put the thought in with sufficient confidence and faith. And if everyone does this, we mobilize the cosmic mind in a transformative way. But of course, somebody whose will is set, we can't change. But internally, there is always a change. Because if I'm fighting for freedom, sooner or later I realize that my life is very short and I won't get my freedom by fighting. Where will I get the freedom from? By understanding my own true nature, by entering into the realm of the divine. You see here, seek refuge in Him alone, says the 18th chapter, continuing, Tameva Sharanam Gaccha Sarva Bhavine Bharata. Seek refuge in that one alone, Him alone, with all your heart. What does it mean? With all your emotional energy, which is normally dispersed, distributed, dissipated here and there. And when we look at the here and there, we'll see that really it is out of self-interest. With all your heart, by His grace, you will gain supreme peace and the eternal abode. In other words, by taking refuge, you'll get the benefit of the one who is supplying you with protection and nourishment. And that's a flow of grace will open up. And then you'll get supreme peace. What are we looking for? We're looking for peace. And we're looking for it in a perpetual way, the eternal abode. Now, Swami Vivekananda in his beautiful lectures on Bhakti Yoga will have some things to say. If you know, he says, that you are positively other than your body, you have then none to fight with or struggle against. Because our current idea is, I am standing here, you're standing there. I have to look at you with half an eye and test you out. And if I like you and you like me, we're okay for the time being. Because your friend of today can be your worst enemy tomorrow. That's just human nature. And then I have to struggle against unfair odds. Then life becomes a struggle. And according to the game of life, most people take it like that. Instead of saying a game, what is the basis of a game? An understanding of a unity of existence, the highest generalization. He begins this lecture, really, that we have picked up toward the end. And he's saying that we should be looking not for the particulars. What he says is, to love the whole universe is possible only by way of loving the samushti, the universal, which is, as it were, the one unity in which are to be found millions and millions of smaller unities. It's no good saying, do you love your body? No, I love my left foot. Then the right foot won't be jealous. You don't think that the one foot, one limb, one part of the skeletal structure is not part of the whole thing. You don't think affecting one thing will affect everything. You don't think that if you see a tree with a branch diseased, that the whole tree must be affected in some way or other. You don't think that that's the case. So we take a partial view. That's our difficulty, that's our problem. A little me dealing with a lot of other little me's somewhere and trying to make some sense of it. And so to love the whole universe is possible only by way of loving the universal, which is, as it were, the one unity in which are to be found millions and millions of small unities. The philosophers of India do not stop at the particulars. They cast a hurried glance at the particulars and immediately start to find the generalized forms, which will include all the particulars. You can look at a wave in an ocean and not see the ocean. You can say, with narrow vision, there is a wave, and where are we? I am at the crest of a crest of a crest of one wave. This is me, and I'll make mortal combat with all the other waves. One wave comes that is bigger than me, I'll either duck or I'll see if I can swell myself up. Either way, it ends in the demise of the wave. Can't avoid it. And then another view will be to say, yes, I'm a wave. In that view, I'm a wave. Somewhere the ocean is there. I don't know where. Another view will be, yes, I'm the wave, and somehow connected with all the other waves, I see similarities. So while I don't really understand I'm the ocean, I do feel a connectedness. But then the other point would be, as valid, if not more so, a final conclusion. I am the ocean. I can erupt into waves if I choose, or go back into the ocean, but I am the ocean. So this is the final generalized, absolute position. The search after the universal, he says, is the one search of Indian philosophy and religion. The jnani aims at the wholeness of things, at the one absolute and generalized. Jnana yoga, if I have to mobilize my capacity to discern, to discriminate, to see that a kind of divine grace is flowing through all of these parts, that aspect of it. It is still one grace that is flowing through. Don't think that jnana yoga is all to do with negativity in terms of eliminated processing. That viveka is not constantly thinking that this is real, this is unreal. Yes, there's that component to it. But it is actually on the other side a revaluation of everything. I revalue it. I don't just leave the discernment, I revalue everything. This is the divine, this is the divine. Divine grace is flowing through all things. We call it life. And then you see, being knowing, which he knows everything. And the bhakta, the devotee, the one who's mobilizing feelings, wishes to realize that one generalized abstract person in loving whom he loves the whole universe. The Holy Mother, Sharada Devi, will tell us, make the whole world your own. And also make every stranger feel at home. Imagine if everyone were to do that. We wouldn't complain about refugees coming to our shores. The yogi wishes to have possession of that one generalized form of power by controlling which he controls the whole universe. because there's only one energy. If you control that, what is pranayama? Controlling prana. Don't think that you're only controlling it here. If you control it here, you control it everywhere. You are omnipotent. The Indian mind throughout its history, he says, has been directed to the kind of singular search after universal in everything. Kasmin no bhagavan bhagavo vidyate. What is that? By knowing which I can know all things, says the Mundaka Upanishad. And then the answer is, well, you see, what is knowledge? Knowing things? Well, two types of knowledge is there. Aparavidya and paravidya. Lower knowledge and higher knowledge. The higher knowledge is the one of this unity of existence. Only one thing is there. The lower knowledge is knowledge of all the particulars, be it even in scripture, or science, or whatever it is, or linguistics. So, if we love this sum total, we love everything, he says. Loving the world and doing it good will all come easily then, if we have that valuation. We have to attain this power only by loving God first. Otherwise, it's no joke to do good to the world. Everything is His, and He is my lover. I love Him, says the Bhakta. In this way, everything becomes sacred to the Bhakta, because all things are His, and all are His children, His body, His manifestation. How then may we hurt anyone? How then may we not love anyone? With the love of God will come, as a sure effect, the love of everyone in the universe. Now we have a formula. If we apply this, if everybody knows and understands and applies this, there are no refugees. There are no wars. There are no displacements. And there is a wealth of corresponding movements, compassionate movements towards anyone who happens to be displaced. The nearer we approach God, he says, the more do we begin to see that all things are in Him. When the soul succeeds in appropriating the bliss of this supreme love, it also begins to see Him in everything. Our heart will thus become an eternal fountain of love. And when we reach even higher states of this love, all the little differences between the things of the world are entirely lost. Man is seen no more as man, but only as God. The animal is seen no more as animal, but as God. Even the tiger is no more tiger, but manifestation of God. Thus, this intense state of bhakti worship is offered to everyone, to every life, and to every being. Knowing that Hari, the Lord, is in every being, the wise have thus to manifest unswerving love towards all beings. And as a result of this kind of intense, all-observing love, comes the feeling of perfect self-surrender. There you have it. Now we go on then to where I left off. So if you know, just to repeat, that you are positively other than your body, you have then none to fight with or struggle against. You are dead to all ideas of selfishness. So the Bhakta declares that we have to hold ourselves as if we are altogether dead to all things of the world. And that is indeed self-surrender. Let things come as they may. This is the meaning of thy will is done, thy will be done. The quotation from the Paternoster of Christianity. Not going about fighting and struggling and thinking all the while that God wills all our own weaknesses and worldly ambitions. Yeah, I'm like this, God must be willing. A kind of resignation, fatalism. God wills it. No. What is your positive mobilizing movement? To love that one that sits in, through, and as everything. And when all these glories are told, the wonderful versions of it in the Bhagavatam, that particular chapter, a conversation with Uddhava and Krishna. And there, some beautiful glories are being told. More or less in every religion, we have something like a recalling of divine glories. We have a synopsis of it on papers, and it's a synopsis of 7th chapter, 9th chapter, 10th chapter, and so on and so forth, 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And there Krishna is not saying, I'm in, he says, as. I come as this, as that. Whatever you think of, I am that. You see, I'm Mount Meru, I'm this, I'm that. So that is where we get the love. Now you realize by now, once you've realized this unity, where an investment of love is total, it becomes jnana, it becomes knowledge. You know now the unity of existence. It may be that good comes even out of our selfish struggles. We acknowledge that. That is, however, God's lookout. The perfected bhakta, their idea must be never to will and work for themselves. Lord, they build high temples in your name. They make large gifts in your name. I am poor, I have nothing. So I take this body of mine and place it at your feet. Do not give me up, O Lord. This is one of the Psalms. So such is the prayer proceeding out of the depths of the devotee's heart. If you read Rumi's poetry, you see the wonderful phrase, lose thyself, lose thyself. They're chanted over, beautiful. You see, in love, you lose yourself because all the attention is on the other. If you follow these 3 criteria, no reward, no rival, no fear. I love you. I don't care if you love me. Human love is not like that, isn't it? I love you if you love me. When you start to hate me, then I block you off. I take you off my friends list. Blocked. To him who has experienced it, this eternal sacrifice of the self unto the beloved Lord is higher by far than all wealth and power, that even all soaring thoughts of renown and enjoyment. The peace of the devotee's calm resignation is a peace that passeth all understanding and is of incomparable value, shifting there between Christian texts and Hindu texts. His aprati kulya, in a state of the mind, is a state of the mind in which it has no interests and naturally knows nothing that is opposed to it. Then he says, in this state of sublime resignation, everything in the shape of attachment goes away completely, except that one all-absorbing love, without renunciation in a direct way. How can we detach? Forget about detachment. Attach to God. The rest will take care of itself. In the example, you see how you conquer a shadow that I give often. See, say, this thing keeps following me. It's a nuisance. Tomorrow I'll make sure I ambush it, and I'll shoot it in the foot or something. I'll stamp on it, something like that. You won't do it. Face the sun, walk toward the sun, the shadow follows obediently. How will I increase my tapasya is a question that somebody asked me some years ago. I said, but aren't you a devotee? You're doing service as a devotee? Oh, yes. But I want to do more discipline. I said, no. Why didn't you increase your love of God? Why should we love God? Because God is lovable. Because everywhere we look, we see His glory. His, her, it glory. You do that, the rest will be taken care of. This is the beautiful path of bhakti, where we don't have to struggle. So, and we at the same time get the internal rapture of devotion and love. And at the same time, psychologically, we feel we are loved. It's not just one way. Because the more we tune in and tap into the divine grace, the more the divine grace flows. The more we step toward the divine, the more the divine flows toward us 1,000-fold, making the crooked path straight for us. in whom all things, so, goes away completely, in the shape of attachment goes away completely, except that one all-absorbing love to him in whom all things live and move and have their being. This attachment of love to God is indeed one that does not bind the soul, but effectively breaks all its bondages. Such a sweet path. So we can then, on this United Nations Refugee Day, do several things. First of all, we can shift our own allegiance and let go a little bit. There is a tendency, of course, to be concerned. You see, so many refugees there, man's inhumanity to man. The more we repeat this, the more we build up a negative pattern, a negative thinking pattern. That exacerbates the problem, not only our problem, but the world's problem, if everybody's thinking in this way. Whatever you think will come to pass. It's a predictive movement. So we can do our little part and make sure we have this internal transformation that beams love and compassion and truth and goodness everywhere. Be like a beaming entity, not a complaining entity. Replace your language. You don't say, what a pity, what a pity. Replace it with, what a glory, what a glory. Because despite all of these things, there's still an investment which is taking place. The sun still beams and shines. It doesn't care what use you make of the sunshine. Food is still supplied. Digestion still happens by itself, unasked. An investment in life energy is in you, enabling you to pass your universal university exams every moment, every lifetime, lifetime after lifetime. Come, my child, try again, try again. This is love. How do we know that God is love? Because God supplies its own grace, free of charge, without complaining, without asking increase in wages, never going on strike. What a beautiful lover this is. So we'll conclude. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thanks, Swami.
Thanks, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay.
Oh.